All right, guys, here we are. We are back again. This week we had looked at an artist by the name of Salvador Dali. As we can tell by viewing that presentation, you can tell his artwork's pretty weird. Now, how we're going to connect that to our assignment this week on pixel art is that we are going to actually make one of his melting clocks, but we're going to use what we've learned from our past lessons and understanding how to use circles, copy, paste, but also how to use those layers that we practice with in some of the past assignments that we've done. So here, we're going to talk about how to set that kind of thing up. And you can make yours different than mine. I'm just going to make mine a stopwatch or like an old like stopwatch clock or something. You can make yours an alarm clock. You can make yours a normal clock, whatever. It just needs to have some form or fashion of detail to it. So you notice up here in the top right-hand corner of my screen, I'm going to use this kind of as a walkthrough just to kind of talk about how to make the actual drip happen, to make it like it's melting, like Salvador Dali's clocks did in his paintings, which he was very famous for. But to say that, we're going to start off with just a circle. Now, whenever we make our first circle, we want it to be a little bit smaller. It's just easier for us to set up. So I'm going to click my circle tool, again, right over here. My hope, again, is that you're pretty familiar with this kind of stuff now. So make a smaller circle. I'm going to make a slightly larger circle up here. I don't expect you guys to have this up here in the top right. I just have it there for you to kind of show you along the way. So got my slightly bigger circle. I've got my little bit smaller circle. I'm going to take that. I'm going to click around that, right? And I'm going to line that up. Now, also, one thing to remind you of as we go through this, we want our canvas size to be 100 by 100. It just makes it easier for us to make changes if we need to make changes. So don't make it too big. Don't make it too small. It's just easier if it's 100 by 100. So I'm going to put that in the middle. Also, remember, if you guys want to center it in the middle, since you're not going to have this thing up here in the top right-hand corner of your screen, then you can just go over here where it says options. And after you clicked options, remember there's the layer align here. So you can align left, you can align top, you can align center, whatever. I can't click that because I have this thing here that's kind of throwing that off. So you can click that and it'll align it to the center if you want it to be in the center. All right, so I've got my basic idea of my clock set up. Again, all I did was just use this select tool over here to click and drag around something and then carry it into the spot that I wanted. But just make sure you give yourself some space between them. That way you don't select something else you don't want by accident. So the next thing, I'm going to go ahead and color in the rim around my little stopwatch clock thing here. So I'm going to make mine a golden color. Again, I'm using the bucket tool. My colors are over here. Again, hopefully by this point you guys have some familiarity with that. Remember, you can zoom in up here in the top right. So I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to make like the little clicker part on the top of my stopwatch here. So let's put a little bits there. I'm going to try to make this short and sweet for you guys. I know that we've been doing a lot of pixel art stuff, but we're going to have to do a lot of it, like I said, as we venture through this 9 weeks. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, if you really enjoy it, just because we have limited resources to be able to access as we are at a distance. So, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's happy. I hope everybody's finding some time to do the things that they like to do. Just because we've got time off, enjoy the time that you've got. But again, yours does not have to look like mine. Again, my hope is that you add some detail to it in some form or fashion. That way it has a little bit of life to it, so it's not so plain. But I'm just adding extra little details to mine just because I want mine to be a little bit better quality. So, have like this little bit up here at the top. Let's say it's a little like stopwatch, like clicker piece or part. So I have all that set up. I could add some shading and stuff around the edges, but I'm not trying to waste your all's time here. So I've got my clock set up. Now, what I want to do with that is I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this frame. I'm going to copy it, I don't know, 5 times for the sake of it. And if I need to delete some frames later, then I can delete frames later. And to say that, I am also going to do make the little dripping action happen along the way, and then we'll come back in and we will add some layers and that kind of stuff as we progress through this. So we're already familiar with layers. Again, that kind of stuff is over here. We're already familiar with layers. I'm on the right-hand side of my screen over here hovering from doing the last assignment before. So to kind of approach this, I'm actually going to go ahead and create a layer. So again, with the add layer button here with the circle with a little plus sign, I'm going to click add layer. Right now it's titled layer 1. remember, always rename your layers so you know what's on that layer. So where mine says layer 1, I'm going to actually go down here right on the bottom right where it says rename layer, and I'm going to name that clock hands, just because it's easier for me later on, and it'll make your life a little bit easier as you go through this as well, just because it helps you make the little changes without having to worry too much about all the other stuff that's happening on top of your clock here. So let us go ahead, and I'm actually going to fill this in on the background. I'm gonna go ahead and fill this in white. And I'm not really worried about that much about the background, but let's go ahead and we will put a blue. Well, actually, no, we'll leave it empty. We'll leave it empty because it'll help us see the drip as we progress through this. So I've got a layer that says clock hands, right? It has nothing on it. I've got a layer that says background. It has, it just has this stuff on it. So again, you're not worried about what's up here in the top right-hand corner of the screen. But then let's go here. I'm actually going to make sure you're on the clock hands layer whenever we go to draw these clock hands. So for me, I'm going to draw them. I want mine to say 12 o'clock. So I would just start here like this. Maybe we have our clock lined up like that, just kind of basic. Maybe you're probably pretty familiar with how clock hands work at this point, but it rotates around the clock. So let's give ourselves some room there. Okay, so I've got my clock hands set up. Now, the only thing that's going to happen as we progress through this is one of these hands is going to go around just to make it like it's continuously moving. But you'll notice, again, over here on the right, it says clock hands. If I make this visible or invisible, it tells me what's on that layer. So the only thing that's on that layer is those hands like that. Everything else is on this background layer like this, right? So if I make that invisible, I still have my clock hands showing up like that, right? Cool. So then the next thing I'm going to do down here where it says copy frame, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to copy that up to 5 times. I can always give myself more room later on, and we're probably going to need a little bit more room when it's all said and done with. So like I said up here, this is kind of put us through the dripping motion. So we want our first frame to stay the same as this. We don't want it to change any right now. It's just set, it's just starting point. It's set up like this. Now I'm going to go to my second frame. Now you guys will notice up here on the top of the screen, right? I have this little sagging bit down like this, right? So I'm actually going to kind of mimic that down here on the bottom of my clock. So let's zoom into this. And I want to make sure I'm on the background, remember, on the background layer, not the clock hands layer. Otherwise, you're going to have some technical difficulties along the way. So I want the bottom of my clock to sag down just a little bit, again, like it's melting. So let us go in there, and we're going to make that happen, right? Okay. So I'm trying to match that. So if I go to my first frame, right, it's like this. My second frame is like this. And then all my other frames after that, again, I have 5 of them, haven't changed. So now what I want to do is move on to my next frame. I'm not changing the clock hands yet because I'm not worried about them. I am then going to progress on to this one here. So let us go around that. I'm on frame 3. I have my square tool selected, and I'm just going to click and drag around that so you guys know which one I'm trying to mimic and represent here. So I'm going to take this same kind of look here, and I'm going to go down here to the bottom of my clock. You guys can see the ghosted version of the frame that came before this and kind of where it's starting and what we're working with. So I'm going to go off of that since I can see it. And it's dripping down a little bit more. I can zoom out a little bit. And I'll put this on canvas for you guys to look at, just so you have a clear idea of how maybe you should approach it. That way you're not having to look at me constantly zoom in and out as doing this demo. And you can bring that up in a separate frame if you want, or a separate window if you want, and look at that as you walk through this. So, right, so now I've got frame 1. So you'll see down here, it's this plane, then it's starting to sag a little bit, and then sagging a little bit more. And then you want to move on to this next one here. So again, I'm now moving on to frame 4. I'm just going to click and drag around the one that I want you guys to look at next. So let's make that black instead so you guys can see that a lot easier. Click and drag around this one. So let's try to represent that down here. Now again, I can see the ghosted version of the one that came before it. So I'm going to kind of use that as a starting point. Don't put a color in the background. That's my recommendation to you until you get to the very end of this. It just makes your life a lot easier as you progress because it lets you be able to see what's going on with your frames as you go through this. So let us actually erase this bit, and I'm actually going to make this come down a little bit more, come down a little bit more. I'm going to make that clock start to make it look like it's dripping here. So Then we're going to go back in here. Let us take this and fill these colors in. Again, I can use my bucket tool to fill stuff in. So you'll notice, right, I have frame 1, I have frame 2, I have frame 3, I have frame 4, and then now I'm going to move on to frame 5. And you'll notice here in frame 5, I'm going to have this little drip start to happen. It's going to be separated from the actual sag part of the melting portion itself. So again, I'm in frame 5 at this point. I'm click and drag around this so you guys can see that. So now let's go back up here. So I can see the ghost version of the one that came before this. Again, I'm still on the background layer as I'm progressing through all of these frames because I want this little bit of sag to kind of go back, kind of like it's recoiling after it has dripped off, kind of like, a drip from a faucet would before it starts to come back out again. I can see that my little drip was here before, so I'm actually going to use my circle tool, make a little circle, and I'm going to take my select tool. I'm going to slide that so it's centered, and I'm going to fill that space in. So now if I go through this, right, frame 1, frame 2, and again, as we go through this, you'll see these little squares around the things that I've selected. Frame 3, frame 4, and then frame 5, we have the drip actively starting to happen. Now, maybe I'm going to have a table down here, or maybe I want it to go off the screen, but I'm going to have to add enough frames for it to be able to continue to drop. So you'll notice I'm going to go ahead and copy that frame. It's my very last frame. All I have is a little sagging bit down here. It's no major problem. But you'll notice that I'm now progressing onto this. There's an arrow here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and make that green so you guys can see up here in the top right-hand corner. This is what I'm moving on to now. This arrow is only indicating the direction that that drop's going to continue. So it's going to keep going down a little bit by a little bit. I would have it drop at a pretty fast rate. Maybe you'll need to add maybe 2 or 3 other frames as it drips off of your screen as you do this. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm actually just going to use my select tool here. Again, I'm still on this background. I'm not messing with the clock hands. I'm going to take this. I'm going to slide it down some. So again, you guys can see that that's there. And actually, this is going to go away now a little bit. So let's take our line tool and let's bring this back up. Take our eraser tool, get rid of this bit, right? And so then I'm now looking at my preview. So frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5, frame 6. It's dropping a little bit more. So we're going to add another frame. We're not clicking the add frame button, though. We're going to click copy frame. So we're still having this thing drop more. And maybe this time it's about to go off the screen. So let's go all the way down. Maybe it's about right here. And I'm not changing anything about this portion of my clock. Again, yours can be strange. It could have wings. It could be an alarm clock. It could be whatever. But in the end, it's just going to be floating in the sky. And then we're going to have these little hands animating, moving around this. So then I'm going to actually copy that frame. And then we're going to make this go off the screen. About right there. I want to have a little bit of that black showing maybe before it goes off. And then I'm going to actually add, actually I don't think I need to add another frame. So let's see what this looks like if I preview my animation. So right now, I'm not sure how it looks on your screen because I know that the camera software here that's capturing my screen does some strange things, but you should have a pretty reasonable looking drip as it drips off that clock, making it look like it's melting or dripping like it's a faucet or something. Again, we're replicating Salvador Dali's melting clocks. We're using him as inspiration here as an artist and kind of understanding his role in art history. So now we've got our whole thing melting. Do we want to do? I have 8 frames. My hope is that you have at least 8 frames to make yours look nice. Again, up here in the top of my screen, I've tried to outline around the respective version of what the drip might look like as you progress through this. So now what I want to do is I actually want to make the hands of my clock move. But what I'm going to need to do to be able to understand where that's at now is we talked about how to make layers visible and invisible. Remember, we did all our stuff on the background layer. So what we can do is make that invisible, right, as we progress through this, and we should be able to see where our clock was at. Our clock hands were at in the frame before this. So in frame 1, I'm not changing anything about this, right? I just want this to be just by itself the same as it was whenever we made it. So the next thing, I'm now in frame 2, right? I have this little drip down here. I'm actually going to go to the background. I'm going to make it invisible. And then I'm going to change just the clock hands portion of this. So let's erase this line. Make sure you're on the clock hands layer whenever you go to erase that. And you guys will see, again, you'll see that ghosted version of where it was. This is the only one that's going to, well, actually, I should say this is the only one that's going to go around because it's going from 12 and it's going to go all the way back to 12 and it's going to go all the way back to 12. And we have 8 frames. So let's try to make it, a reasonable size here. So I'm actually going to start off, again, making sure you're on the clock hands layer. And let's erase this guy. And we then want to use our line tool and let's make it move to the right a little bit. So I'm just making it all so it's 1 pixel all the way around. I'm going to make it 2 pixels wide because that's how wide it was whenever I had it in the beginning. And let's take this out just a little more. So now if I look at that right, this was my clock hands in frame 1. That's it in frame 2. And now that we can see through that, we should be able to come back in here. And if you've made any mistakes and you've erased on the wrong layer, just make sure that you take this kind of thing and you fill those spaces back in. Just again, making sure you're on the right layer whenever you're doing these things. Otherwise, you're going to encounter some issues along the way. So this is my frame 1. This is my frame 2. And I made those changes on the clock hands layer. So now that we've noticed what it looks like whenever we make a mistake, let us progress to our next frame. And then we're going to, again, make our background, right, not visible. So we're able to see where our clock hand frame was at, our clock hand layer was at before. Let's go there. And now let us make this change. So I'm actually going to just slice this off using my select tool. And I'm going to just rotate it this time. And I'm going to stick it on top of this one. Because at some point, clock hands overlap as it's working its way around. So I'm just going to do that for mine. So I'm attaching it there. Let's make sure it's lined up pretty reasonably. I don't want to go too far. So it's going to be right there. Then I'm going to make my background layer visible again. So now we're looking at this. This is frame 1. This is frame 2. This is frame 3. So right, our clock hand is moving. We're going to our next thing. So the same thing as before. We are now going to make, again, on the background layer, this little white spot over here can make that invisible. Lets me see that my clock hand frame was here before. So then what I'm going to do is we're going to slice this one off. So let's cut that out. Make sure you are on your clock hands layer. Otherwise, again, you're going to have some problems. So also make sure you're on the right frame as you progress through this as well. So make sure you're on clock hands. Let's make our background invisible. Make sure, again, I'm going to keep saying it. My clock hands layer is visible. So let's go here and I'm going to actually cut that out. And then I can see where my clock hand was at before. I'm then going to go down here and I'm going to make my clock hand go out this direction. So again, using black, let's make it so it's all 1 pixel going like that. And then let's make it all so it's going to be the 2 pixels wide like I want it to be. So filling all that space in. So again, it's rotating. Let's make that visible again. I'm actually going to put a little dot here because I don't like the way that looks. So let's see how we're looking. Frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, right? So our little hand is going around our clock, but our clock hand is on a separate layer that we're not affecting the background. It's no major issues or problems. So the next one, right? So I'm going to go to my background. Once again, I'm going to make it invisible so I can see where my clock hand was before. I'm going to make sure I'm on the clock hands layer over here on the right side. This time, since my clock hand is moving around, I'm actually just going to take this and I'm just going to slide it all down here. So all I did was just use my select tool, select around that, and just slide that down since that's where it's going to. So we've got that set up. I'm now going to come back here to my background layer over here on the right. I'm going to make that visible. So frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5. So then we're doing the same thing in our 5th frame. So go into our 5th frame here, right? I'm again going to come over here to my right, make my background layer invisible so I can see where my clock hand was at before. Make sure I'm on the clock hands layer. Again, I renamed that to make sure I knew what was on it. And then I'm going to select around this on my clock hands layer. I'm going to cut that out. I'm then going to come over here. Before, I'm going to make this all 1 pixel wide like that. I'm going to make that another one right next to it. Fill those gaps in, slide through that space. And then now that I have that there, let's make this right again. So now I have frame 1, right? Frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5, frame 6. So frame 7, again, is going to go straight out over here. So let us do that. So again, I'm on frame 7 now, down here at the bottom. I'm going to make my background layer invisible. I'm going to go back to my clock hands layer. I'm then going to cut this out. And this time, all I'm going to do is slide it over here. I'm going to use my rotate tools, which we should have learned how to use in the past assignments. Rotate it to the left. I'm going to slide that so it lines up like I want it to. Okie dokie. And then I'm going to make my background layer visible again. So then again, I'm going to walk through this. Frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5, frame 6, frame 7. And then we're going to have one more frame where it's like this. It's going at an angle. So again, the same thing we've done before. Make our background layer invisible. Our clock hand should be on this separate layer at the top here. So let's go here. Let's slice this off. Cut that out, right? I'm then going to come in. I'm going to draw a line. Again, making it also it's just evenly 1 pixel wide all the way up to the top. And let's undo that part because I did it by accident. So then make this all the way up, 1 pixel wide all the way from the top to the bottom. Okie dokie, fill that in, and then come back down here, make my background layer visible again. So now, again, frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5, frame 6, frame 7, frame 8. Now, if I'm previewing this, you guys will notice it may not be the same on your screen because I know this video stuff does some weird things, but that clock hand is rotating while also the clock is dripping. Now, to say that, we've got our layers set up. We have our clock hands on one layer. We have our drip on the background layer where the clock is. We are now going to go in and we're going to fill the background in on each of these. So let's say we go in here. I'm going to go ahead and slice this stuff out at this point in the demo, just because we understand how that works, hopefully, by this point. So I want mine to be in the sky. We saw in Salvador Dali's work, he had like an open sky in most of his work. So let's go ahead and, again, as you do this, please make sure you're on the background layer. If you fill in the clock hands layer, this is what happens. I fill that in, right? The only thing that's left showing is the clock hands layer. So make sure that whenever you fill this in, that you are on the background layer whenever you fill that kind of thing in. Otherwise, you're going to run into some difficulty. So I'm just going to bust through this and let's just cut all these out. And I'm just going to fill all these in each of my frames here. So again, I'm not doing anything spectacular or mind-blowing, but my hope is that we're getting a better understanding of how we can animate multiple things at a time whenever we are working with separate layers like this. So in the last one, we just animated one thing using a different layer on top of it. So now we're animating two things with multiple layers. Each layer is animated in its own way. My hope is as we progress through this, we're going to have a choice animation. I want you guys to incorporate your own interest in some form or fashion. I know that some of you guys have maybe not been through these specific assignments before, but I'm trying to make them as approachable as possible and also giving you guys ample amounts of time to finish them. I know you have other assignments and meetings that you have to attend for your different teachers and things. And also for me, you have videos that you need to watch and provide information on. And some of those videos are pretty long, which takes some time to watch. I know that some of you guys are probably going to skip through them and only give me the information that I'm asking for. But, you know, if you find it interesting, then you should watch them because I think that they're interesting. And I think that you guys will enjoy the competition aspect of it. I understand that not everybody's that big a fan of art as, you know, the art teacher is here. But, you know, take the time to watch it. You've got the time to watch it. I don't know what else you're doing with your time because you're just hanging out at home. And you have other assignments that you need to finish for your other teachers. I get that. But so let's cut all this stuff out. And then we should be all filled in. So now let's preview this. All right, so our clock hand is rotating and the clock is dripping. If you didn't know how to make the thing drip, like I said, I'm going to upload that just basic information for you guys on Canvas. Up to this point, you guys should know how to submit your work. Remember, there is a video on how to submit your work to me on Canvas. Also, if you don't know how to use any of the tools, you've probably been struggling up to now. I've done whole videos talking about an overview of how they all interact and participate with each other. So again, yours does not have to look like mine. But I would say incorporate some of your own style into it. Make it a different color. Make it be a different type of clock. Make the clock have wings. If you want to make the clock have a face or something, it's really up to you. But again, we're just trying to find a bridge between being able to submit work online while we're away, uh, introducing you guys some different art topics in art history, and also introducing you guys to some digital art animation basics. So again, this one was mostly about just understanding how to animate multiple layers on top of each other. And it makes the animations a lot easier in the long run, and you can make your animations more complex as you go along. But I didn't want to make this too long. Also, I've noticed in some of the animations that people have submitted to me, try to keep the frame speed at around 100 by 100. I understand that some of you guys want to slow it down or whatever, and that's up to you. But if you need to change the frame speed in all of them, down here at the bottom it says 100 milliseconds, right? That's what that means. If you want to change them all at once over here on the bottom right, you can change it to 50, 100, 250, 500, 1,000, whatever. It just makes it a lot slower. But again, if you preview this, right, you have the drip going off the screen and you have the little hands going around the clock here. So you know how to submit your work, hopefully. The Dropbox should be open for you to submit it. I hope you guys are enjoying your time off. I hope that everybody's doing well and nobody's gotten sick. And, doing your thing, enjoying yourself, finding some time to do the things that you like. All right, I'll see you guys next week. So long for now.